The movie opens with a radio transmission from a man claiming he's part of a safe community hidden downriver. He explains that the river is the only way to reach them, but he doesn't believe anyone could survive the journey with kids. The route is so dangerous that one stretch of rapids may even force someone to remove their blindfold to steer the boat. We then cut to a woman named Mallory, preparing two young children, known only as boy and girl, for that very journey. She tells them they're about to make a long and dangerous trip, and they must obey every single instruction if they want to survive. They are forbidden from removing their blindfolds, no matter what they hear, and they're not allowed to speak once they're in the boat. After making sure the children understand, she picks up a box carrying pet birds, blindfolds all three of them, and carefully leads the children outside by following a rope stretched across the property. Counting every step to stay on course, they reach a small rowboat, climb aboard, and begin their desperate journey downstream. The story then flashes back 5 years earlier. We meet Mallory, a talented artist who is heavily pregnant. While painting in her studio, she's visited by her sister Jessica. As they watch the news, reports reveal a terrifying phenomenon rapidly spreading across Europe and Siberia. Witnesses describe people suddenly becoming psychotic before taking their own lives, but authorities have no explanation for what's causing it. As alarming as the reports are, Jessica is far more concerned about her sister, believing she's isolated herself from the world since her relationship ended. Looking at one of Mallory's paintings, she says it reflects an inability to connect with others. But when Jessica insists everything will change once the baby arrives, Mallory admits she doesn't think she'll ever be able to form that kind of bond. The sisters then head to Mallory's prenatal appointment. Their jokes about drinking during pregnancy earn an unimpressed look from Dr. Lapham, who reminds Mallory that she can't keep pretending the baby doesn't exist. Seeing how uncertain she is about becoming a mother, she tells her that adoption is always an option. As they leave the hospital, they notice a woman they had passed earlier suddenly smashing her head against a glass window. Watching in horror, Mallory tells Jessica that whatever has been happening across Europe and Siberia has now reached them. Outside, complete chaos erupts as panicked drivers lose control of their cars, and people run through the streets in every direction. Jessica rushes Mallory into the car and speeds away, but moments later, she catches sight of something outside. Her eyes glaze over, and she becomes terrified by something only she can see. Jessica swerves wildly through traffic while Mallory tries to keep the car on the road. The vehicle eventually flips over, leaving both sisters alive but trapped in the wreckage. Still under the creature's influence, Jessica climbs out and walks directly into the path of an oncoming truck, dying instantly as a devastated Mallory watches helplessly. Mallory stumbles through the chaos until she collapses outside a nearby house. A kind woman named Lydia rushes outside to help her, despite her husband Douglas trying to stop her. But before Lydia can reach Mallory, she too catches sight of the unseen entity. Believing she's speaking to her own mother, she walks into a burning car, which explodes moments later. A stranger named Tom pulls Mallory to her feet and rushes her inside the house, where several other survivors have taken shelter. With the doors locked behind them, Douglas blames Mallory for his wife's death. As everyone tries to make sense of what's happening, one couple abandons the house after hearing their young son calling for help over the phone. The remaining survivors compare what they've witnessed, and one man believes the mysterious force takes the form of each person's deepest fears or greatest loss. Whatever it really is, they reach one terrifying conclusion. The entity itself can't be seen directly, but anyone who looks at it is driven to take their own life. Overwhelmed by everything she's just lost, Mallory breaks down as Tom comforts her. Meanwhile, the others board up the windows and seal the house, determined to make sure no one ever looks outside again. Back in the present and 6 hours into their journey, darkness completely surrounds Mallory and the children as they continue drifting down the river. She repeatedly tries to contact someone over the radio, but instead, all she hears is the entity whispering her name. Back in the past, the survivors listen to a radio broadcast announcing that, as long as they stay indoors and avoid looking outside, they should be safe. While the update offers a glimmer of hope, tensions inside the house continue to rise, especially with Douglas, whose hostile attitude is wearing everyone's patience thin. Their biggest concern, however, is that they're quickly running out of food and supplies. Their discussion is interrupted by a desperate knock at the door. Despite Douglas insisting they leave the stranger outside, a woman named Olympia begs to be let in. Refusing to abandon her, Mallory points a rifle at Douglas, forcing him to back down so the others can safely bring Olympia inside. Using a blanket to block the doorway, the group carefully guides Olympia into the house. They learn she's also pregnant, with a due date only days after Mallory's. Douglas complains that the house has become a maternity ward, while everyone else worries that they'll soon run out of food if they remain trapped inside. That's when the homeowner, Greg, remembers the house is surrounded by security cameras that stream live feed. He believes watching the outside world through a video feed instead of looking at it directly might allow them to safely scout the area and eventually search for supplies. Although Mallory warns they still don't understand how the creatures work, Greg volunteers to test the theory himself. He straps himself into a chair in front of the monitors and begins watching the live feeds while the others wait anxiously outside the room. Moments later, loud thuds echo through the house. They rush upstairs only to find Greg smashing his head against the furniture after seeing something on the screens. He dies from his injuries, proving that even viewing the creatures through a camera is enough to drive someone insane. The survivors destroy the monitors, leaving the group devastated and losing all hope. That night, Olympia tries to bond with Mallory by talking about baby names, but Mallory, still grieving her sister and struggling to accept her pregnancy, keeps her distance. Back in the present and 14 hours into their journey, Mallory hears a man calling out, insisting it's safe to remove their blindfolds. He claims to have food and says he's seen the entity with his own eyes and there's nothing to fear. Mallory orders the children to keep their blindfolds on and fires her gun blindly. Moments later, the man attacks, trying to rip off her blindfold. After a brutal struggle, Mallory hacks him up with a machete. Back in the past, the group has officially run out of food. Their only option is to venture outside. One of the survivors, Charlie, suggests going to the supermarket where he used to work, explaining that he locked it up before fleeing. It's only a short drive away, and 5 people volunteer for the trip. They cover the car's windows with newspaper and rely entirely on the GPS to guide them. As they drive blindly through the deserted streets, they can feel the car rolling over what are likely dead bodies, but they have no choice except to keep going. Suddenly, the GPS begins warning them about nearby obstacles as the birds become agitated, signaling that the entity is close. Tom keeps his nerve and manages to drive them safely to the supermarket. Inside, they gather as much food and supplies as they can. Mallory also finds a cage with birds and decides to take them along, after noticing they react whenever the creatures are nearby. Their trip is interrupted when they hear Charlie's co-worker trapped inside a freezer, begging to be let out. As the group are debating whether to let him in, he starts rambling about how beautiful the entity is and insists everyone needs to see it. As he pushes his way in, Charlie realizes they are all doomed if he does, so he tackles the man back into the freezer, sacrificing himself so the others can escape. Back at the house that night, Mallory and Douglas finally begin to put their differences aside and have a normal conversation. But the moment is cut short when they hear a car driving away. When they rush to the garage, they discover their vehicle is gone, along with 2 of the survivors. Back in the present and 24 hours into the journey, Mallory stops rowing to let the children rest. But when she sets off again, the boat crashes into a submerged truck and throws Boy into the freezing river. Mallory pulls him back into the boat, but all of their food and blankets are swept away by the current. With no other choice, Mallory leaves the children hidden in the boat and heads into the nearby woods to look for food and blankets. Before leaving, she orders them to stay put no matter what happens and tells them that if anything happens to her, they must never come looking for her and instead save themselves. Inside an abandoned building, she hears strange noises as objects begin moving on their own, manipulated by the unseen entity. She narrowly escapes, but the whispers continue calling her name. When Mallory fires her gun at the entity, Girl hears the shots and leaves the boat to find her. Mallory finds Girl and scolds her for disobeying her orders, warning her never to come looking for her again. Then they return to the boat together. Back in the past, Tom opens up to Mallory about his time serving in Iraq, recalling how he and his fellow soldiers would escort a father and his children to school every day despite the chaos around them. As they spend more time together, the two slowly begin developing feelings for each other. Their peace is short-lived when Olympia lets a desperate man named Gary into the house. While the others search and interrogate him, Gary reveals that he escaped a group of violent mental patients who force people to look at the creatures. He also warns them that some people can look at the entities without harming themselves and now roam the streets trying to make everyone else see them too. Convinced Gary is lying, Douglas tries to throw him out at gunpoint, but the others refuse to abandon him, knock Douglas unconscious, and lock him in the garage instead. Feeling guilty for letting Gary inside, Olympia breaks down and apologizes, saying she feels like a burden. Mallory reassures her that she isn't, and when Olympia asks her to take care of her baby if anything happens to her, Mallory reluctantly promises. Later, she even gives Olympia a small Hello Kitty toy for the baby. Back in the present and 38 hours into the journey, Mallory notices Girl still carrying the Hello Kitty toy she once gave Olympia, revealing that Girl is Olympia's daughter. As they approach the rapids, she warns the children that it's the most dangerous part of the journey and explains that one of them have to remove their blindfold to guide the boat through. Boy volunteers, but Mallory tells him she will decide who looks. She's about to choose Girl, but is unable because of the promise she made to Olympia to protect her daughter. In the end, Mallory declares that no one will look. Instead, they'll face the rapids blindfolded and hope for the best. Back in the past, both Mallory and Olympia suddenly go into labor. As Tom and the remaining survivor rush to help them upstairs, Gary takes out dozens of disturbing drawings of the creatures, exposing himself as one of the fanatics who has seen them and now wants everyone else to see them too. He stuffs the birds into the freezer so they can no longer warn anyone when the creatures are nearby, tears down the paper covering the windows, and unlocks the garage so that Douglas can see the entities. Amid the chaos, Mallory gives birth to a healthy baby boy. Moments later, Olympia delivers a baby girl. Gary then enters the room and calmly admires the newborns. Then, without warning, he pulls open the blinds. Olympia looks directly outside and falls under the creature's control. Still cradling her baby, she begins smiling peacefully while Gary encourages her to show the baby. Realizing what's happening, Mallory pleads with Olympia to give her the child before it's too late. After a few agonizing moments, Olympia finally hands over her daughter. The instant Mallory has the baby safely in her arms, Olympia throws herself out of the window. Gary then turns his attention to Mallory, demanding that she hand over both children. When she refuses, he forces the remaining survivor to look outside instead, instantly driving her insane. She grabs a pair of scissors and takes her own life. Hearing the commotion, Douglas rushes in with a shotgun, but can't aim properly with his eyes closed, terrified of hitting Mallory or the babies. He manages to wound Gary in the arm, but Gary charges him and stabs him with the scissors. Tom then dives for the shotgun, struggling with Gary until two loud gunshots echo through the house. A moment later, Tom emerges alive, having finally put an end to Gary's rampage. 5 years later, Mallory and Tom are still alive, raising the two children together in the house. Although Tom has become a loving father figure, Mallory keeps her distance, refusing to even give the children names. Tom tells her that surviving isn't enough. They deserve hope, dreams, and a mother who loves them. During one of her supply runs, Mallory hides inside an abandoned house after hearing a group of fanatics driving through the streets without blindfolds. Once she safely returns home, she tells Tom what she saw. Realizing the fanatics are still searching the area, Tom insists she should never go out alone again. The encounter also inspires Mallory to build a warning system around the house, hanging bells the children can ring if they're ever in danger. That night, they finally receive a radio transmission from a man named Rick, who claims to be living in a safe sanctuary with food, supplies, and other survivors. He tells them to follow the sound of birds once they make it to the other side. Tom wants to leave immediately, convinced the sanctuary is real, but Mallory fears it's another trap like Gary. Eventually, Mallory agrees to make the journey. Before setting off down the river, the group heads out on one last supply run to gather enough food and equipment for the trip. While searching an abandoned house, Mallory hears the fanatics outside. The group rushes back home, but the fanatics are already closing in. Tom stays behind to hold them off, while Mallory escapes with boy and girl. He kills several of the attackers, but after being shot, he removes his blindfold, sees the creature, kills the last fanatic, and then takes his own life. Hearing the final gunshot, Mallory realizes she's on her own. She grabs boy and girl and begins the dangerous journey down the river toward the sanctuary. After 42 hours on the river, Mallory and the children reach the rapids, where the boat is overturned by the rushing water. Thrown into the current, Mallory finds boy struggling in the river before making her way to the shore, where girl guides her with the sound of a bell. They continue the final stretch of their journey on foot, but the entity refuses to let them go. It follows them every step of the way, whispering in their ears, taking the voices of Tom, Jessica, and even Mallory herself, desperately trying to convince them to open their eyes. Despite the relentless torment, Mallory keeps moving forward, guiding the children through the final path until they arrive at the sanctuary. As the entity surrounds them one last time and makes one final attempt to break Mallory's resolve, the doors suddenly open, and they are pulled safely inside. After their eyes are examined, Mallory and the children are cleared to enter. Inside, she meets Rick and discovers the sanctuary is a school for the blind, where the residents have been safe from the creatures all along. She also sees the familiar face of Dr. Lapham, who welcomes them with relief before asking the children their names. Mallory finally gives them names, calling them Tom and Olympia. Then she opens the bird box and sets the birds free, bringing their long and terrifying journey to an end. The end. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time.